There's this talk about whether China is doing the whole colonization thing in Africa. But honestly, who should really answer that? The Africans themselves. Let's rewind a bit and look at what real-deal colonialism looked like in Africa. Back in the 16th to the mid-19th century, Spain and Portugal were staking claims in different parts of the continent. Fast forward to the late 19th century, European colonization hit its peak, with the Berlin Conference of 1884 being a big player, basically carving up Africa among the European powers. Now, let's be real, European colonialism was a hot mess. There was violence, forced labor, attempts to wipe out cultures. They treated Africans like slaves, messing with their personal freedom and leaving a lasting impact on Africa's economy and politics. So, when we talk about China in Africa, it's a whole different game. If you are curious whether China is colonizing Africa, you should go ask some local Africans, not some Western media. Now we are going to dive into this topic of whether China is doing business with Africa or just wanting to colonize. Over the past few decades, Africa has grappled with a multitude of challenges, including poverty, diseases, civil wars, human trafficking, and drug trafficking. In response, Western aid initiatives aim to assist Africa by addressing basic needs, developing infrastructure, and implementing economic reforms. However, these efforts have not been very effective for various reasons. I've delved into these issues more comprehensively in my previous video, so if you haven't checked it out yet, do it now. Western assistance to Africa did provide support, but over time, its impact was marred by ineffectiveness, leaving a lack of substantial and visible developments. Africans were tired of being treated like beggars. They don't want more aid and charity, which is not the main ingredient for their development. What they really want is to get down to business. That's where China comes in and fulfills African dreams. China's presence in Africa dates back to the 19th century, but initially, Westerners paid little attention to it. As time passed, they gradually realized that China's engagement in Africa was more serious than they had initially thought. So Westerners and their media started focusing on China's rush into Africa. Africans often mention that Westerners came to Africa to perform charities with some camera crews, as if Africans were inferior in a sympathetic way. On the other hand, China just showed up in the doors of African nations, started shaking their hands and let's do some business. In Africa, China does not interfere with internal politics, working with whoever is leading the way. It's a different story from the West's strategy in Zimbabwe, where sanctions ended up hurting the people more than the leaders. Many Africans see China that they're here for business, not for sanctions for what they don't like. And that China has its goals, and when it comes to trade, business, and diplomacy, they let Africa set the agenda and decide what it wants to achieve in this partnership. It's a more collaborative approach compared to the West. China has played a pivotal role in enhancing Africa's transportation infrastructure, providing a significant impetus to the continent's aspirations for regional integration. Let's take a look at a list of major Chinese projects since 2015. Mombasa-Nairobi Standard Gauge Railway, Kenya. Ethiopia-Djibouti Railway. Sauber Hydroelectric Power Station in Ivory Coast. Karuma Hydropower Project in Uganda. Chinese housing project requested by the Zambia government, and various housing development projects for millions of African citizens in other cities. And there are still so many other projects and countless upcoming projects in the future. These infrastructural developments are seen as a game changer for Africa's advancement by African communities. What's even more impressive is the positive impact on job opportunities. Chinese firms, on average, are providing employment to around 80–90% African workers, which is a great boost for the local workforce. But hold up, why is China doing all of these things in Africa? What is China going to gain from it? First of all, we all know that Africa has been a place of wealthy natural resources ranging from golds, diamonds, coppers, cobalts, and many types of gemstones to oil and natural gas. It is an obvious reason that draws China's attention. But Westerners were here for the same goal, too. This is now the era of electric cars. Africa holds strategic importance for China in the context of the electric car industry. The continent is rich in essential resources such as cobalt, a crucial component in electric vehicle batteries. China relies heavily on a stable and sufficient supply of these resources. Africa's population is large and its middle class is expanding. By investing in the continent, China gains access to a burgeoning consumer market for its goods and services, providing new opportunities for Chinese businesses. For example, like China after Mao Zedong rule, Chineses were of large population and jobless. Western countries, especially the USA, saw this as an opportunity to expand their business and for cheap labor. So it is the same reason China is here in Africa. Most importantly, China's Belt and Road Initiative aims to enhance global trade connectivity. Investing in African infrastructure projects, such as roads, railways, and ports, not only facilitates trade but also opens up new investment opportunities for Chinese companies. Economic investments often come with increased diplomatic influence. By being a major investor in Africa, China strengthens its diplomatic ties and fosters goodwill, which can be advantageous on the global stage. And for political dominance, China is a member of the United Nations. When the UN decides to perform a decision, the final outcome is always determined by votes. So African countries under Chinese influence cannot vote against China's will, followed by persuasions or threats. No matter how large or powerful a country is, there is only one vote available per country. And that's how China is holding a lot of vote tickets. For instance, when China influences Africans to abstain from recognizing Taiwan or participate in decisions regarding Taiwan through votes, China typically secures a significant majority with 54 votes, surpassing other nations. Weather and location of Africa is great. There is a lack of natural disasters like tsunami, hurricane or typhoons, earthquakes, storms, landslides, which makes it a stable place to live in. Heat isn't that extreme except in the Sahara Desert. Droughts and famine can be solved effectively with educated and wealthy populations. In the USA, they even managed to build the entire Las Vegas in the middle of desert and canyons. Africa possesses most plain regions, which provides a ground for quick and efficient transportation. Additionally, Africa's population is relatively young, younger than Japan, UK or USA, measured by the median age. The median age is a statistical measure that represents the middle point of a set of ages, where half of the population is older and half is younger, and shown by numbers. By 2022, Africa is only 18.8 years old while Japan is 49, UK 40, and USA 38. So Africa is really like a young man full of energy to get the jobs done. China's investments in Africa play into its broader geopolitical strategy. It helps counterbalance the influence of other major powers and extends China's presence as a global economic player. And this is my personal opinion. You know how in movies these days, they're changing things up, especially with characters. From Hollywood to Disney, it's like they've got a newfound love for diversity, especially highlighting black people. Notably in the Little Mermaid live-action movie, it's all about showing that they care about inclusivity and representing everyone. There used to be even some sarcastic jokes about black people in horror movies or crime scenes in movies. I understand that the trend of converting main roles to black characters in movies is part of a broader movement towards greater diversity and representation in the film industry. And I also understand that this is one of their marketing strategies. But since these white people rarely had a good history with black communities in the world, especially in the United States, is this some kind of making up, apology or propaganda or persuasion to African population because they know Africa is moving towards China and is now a rising star, which they failed to do, and that they do care about Africans more than ever? Please let me know what you think about that in the comment below. I'm neither Westerner, nor African, and plus, nor Chinese. So let's get back to the main topic. It is an avoidable fact that Chinese infrastructures and aid project include strings and debt issues, but many Africans are willing to accept that because of visible development in their everlasting infrastructures, job provisions, industries, and finally that they are being treated as business partners, exclusions to some oppressions by Chinese supervisors upon African workers. And even though they could never repay for what China has built at their current economic status, there is a chance for them to upgrade their middle-class people and finally overall country wealth in the future. This is the current debt trap that we keep hearing about. It also is a fact that China wants total influence over African nations. Many people feel uneasy about China's ascent on the global stage. I mean, look at the South China Sea mess, the Taiwan tension, Tibet being occupied, cozying up to dictators of ASEAN. And let's not forget the ongoing border dispute with India. And although China's Belt and Road Initiative project raises concerns about debt traps, lack of transparency, environmental impact, labor issues in Africa, many Africans think this is a development opportunity better than being colonized by the West in the past and Western charity and aid programs that bring little sustainable development to the African population but feeding dictators. In the historical narrative of Africa, Western nations provided aid to the despotic leaders they helped install, only to witness these funds being misappropriated for personal gain by corrupt governments. This recurring pattern characterized the history of the continent, where leaders accumulated national debts, siphoning them for personal enrichment and ultimately avoiding repayment. Consequently, the West halted lending to African countries, leaving the present generation of Africans to grapple with the repercussions of this legacy, contributing to the challenges faced by today's African societies. They'd rack up these huge national debts and conveniently forget about repaying. That's why the West eventually decided to cut off the cash flow to African countries. When leaders lend money from other countries, those leaders are not the ones who have to repay, but it's on the shoulders of the next generations. Therefore, it is completely dependent on how the debt money is used, whether it is for infrastructure developments, enriching human capital, or whether it is going straight into corrupted pockets. There is a famous saying by John Adam: there are two ways to conquer and enslave a country. One is by sword and other is by debt. So you can't be too careful. If your country is mismanaging and corrupting with China's debt without development, you imagine the rest. The construction of the African Union headquarters, entirely funded by Chinese firms, has raised concerns about potential espionage activities. China provided financial and technical support for the project. However, reports emerged suggesting that the building was equipped with sophisticated spying devices. Allegedly, the Chinese-funded construction included the installation of advanced monitoring systems, allowing unauthorized access to confidential information straight to servers in mainland China. The incident raised questions about China's intentions and the extent of its influence in African institutions. So, we all can conclude that China is not being a saint in Africa. Africans need to seize the opportunities and projects provided by China for their sustainable and effective development, even though it comes with debts, strings, and other influential factors. I guess this is enough for explaining China's occupation in Africa, determining whether this is an economic partnership or modern colonialism. The answer lies in the video. Don't forget to check out my other video, How the Western Aid Programs Have Failed in Africa, for connection with this video. And I really like to know what you think of what China has been performing in Africa, especially from African audiences. Thank you so much for watching.